Hey guys, it's Miss Bates. I just wanted to take a few minutes today to talk to you about Lexile levels. This is something that we emphasize a lot with SRI testing, fast bridge testing, etc., but I don't know that teachers have necessarily taken the time to explain what exactly a Lexile measures and why it matters and doesn't matter when we're choosing reading for our own pleasure. Lexiles measure two things. It's the length of a sentence, number of words in a sentence, as well as the frequency of uncommonly used words. This is why Lexiles will naturally go up as a student's vocabulary expands, because reading and writing, they'll choose text with more and more unfamiliar words. But a couple of things I want to address. Some books, it's impossible to Lexile them, such as this one here. It's called the Diagnostic Criteria, or the DSM-4. This is a quick reference to all brain and psychological disorders. So, for example, anxiety disorders. Now, this book is set up more like an outline than necessarily a text. You don't need to see specific words, but if you can see the text features. So you can't really assign a Lexile level to this because there's not that many sentences. So if you did, you wouldn't have a very high Lexile level. Whereas in actuality, this text is fairly complex because it talks about various symptoms, various diagnostic criteria, and anyone reading it has to be able to decode all of those components together. So just because a book has an A or no Lexile level listed does not mean that it is not a challenging or rigorous text. Secondly, some students have incredibly high Lexiles, and yes, we want them reading at that Lexile, and it's good to continue to improve your Lexile level, because as you do that, you're able to decode more and more advanced texts, such as scientific research papers or historical documents. But students who read over a certain Lexile level are not going to be able to consistently find texts, fiction or nonfiction, written at their level. For example, by the time I was in 8th grade, my Lexile level was between 1450 and 1500. And if my teacher had forced me to read nothing but what was at my Lexile level, it would have been the Federalist Papers, which is a nonfiction text written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay, explaining the benefits and complexities of a constitutional republic, government stuff. It's a 1450 Lexile. And I love this book. I go to it repeatedly when I want to think about government and think about the way government runs. I don't want to read this every day for fun. That's torturous. So just because a book is at a high Lexile does not necessarily mean that it is captivating, for example. Another thing that can make a difference is I've got two here. Narrative in the Life of a Frederick Douglass, which is an American slave, and Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Jacobs. This is a combined textbook. Narrative in the Life by Frederick Douglass is written at a 1040. Jacobs is a 740. So that's a difference of 300 Lexile points, which roughly 2 grade levels, depending on the grade level and the year. But the difference being some of the incidents that Harriet Jacobs discusses, specifically in regards to the treatment of female slaves, make for me that text more, trying to think of the best word to describe it, it's just more emotionally difficult to get through. So a Lexile does not always captivate or capture the emotions involved in the text. Similarly, finding a Lexile for poetry, Emily Dickinson here, one of my favorites. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Emily Dickinson, but the woman was not a huge fan of traditional sentences, lots of dash marks, semicolons, etc. So assigning a Lexile to her poetry is impossible. It's just not going to happen, and I feel that it would be a non-valuable asset. The real thinking with poetry is trying to figure out where the rules are bent and why that benefits us. Oops, sorry, hitting my iPad. Similarly, we have Jason Reynolds' Long Way Down. This is a phenomenal book. Bestseller, deserves every award it ever got. It's what's called a novel in verse. So not a whole lot of traditional sentences, kind of written as poetry, but it has a fantastic, captivating plot that deals with this idea of retribution within inner cities and struggling communities. This book emotionally is a big deal, but its Lexile is almost impossible to gauge because of its formatting. So don't just think that, oh, hey, it's a novel in verse, it'll be easy, because no, that's not accurate either. A couple more I want to talk about. Especially teaching in Southwest Kansas, we have Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. which is a narrative nonfiction, 1040 Lexile, putting it in the 9th, 10th grade range. And then we have No Saints in Kansas by Amy Brashears. She lived in Garden City. This is a fictitious account dealing with the fictitious daughter of the defense lawyer for Perry. And it measures at an A Lexile because nobody's bothered to Lexile yet, which is fine. But these two books cover the same event, the murder of the Clutter family and its subsequent impact on the community. But this one is narrative nonfiction, original true crime. This one is more of a traditional narrative. Both are very much worth reading. Both are very much indicative of not only the murder and its investigation, but the impact of that murder on Southwest Kansas. So, just because two books cover the same topic does not mean their Lexile is the same, nor the approach is the same. And lastly, one quick thing I want to talk about, because I know this video is getting long. Lexile with fiction is not necessarily going to tell you much, except the long-windedness of the author. Here we have Heat by Mike Lupica, deals with a baseball team. A lot of fun read. 940 is the Lexile, putting it right in the 8th grade range. I would hand this to any 8th grader who is interested in sports. Hands down. Here we have Song of Solomon by the late, great Toni Morrison. She passed away a couple weeks ago. Lexile level of 870. So if you look at it objectively, 70 points higher than this one. Hand this to any 8th grader. I would probably want explicit parent permission because the content and the context of this book is significantly more mature and requires a significantly stronger reader to decode exactly what's going on. So, to sum up, perks of a Lexile, decoding texts. I would say that a Lexile is a valid way to look at most nonfiction, especially when it gets into narrative nonfiction and those sort of things. Not a great way to assess literature, necessarily, and its value. Hemingway wrote incredibly short, choppy sentences, so his work's Lexile is going to be shorter than, say, even Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That's true. Diary of a Wimpy Kid has a higher Lexile than most things by Ernest Hemingway. Kids are going to struggle with Hemingway because though the sentences are short, the ideas are complex. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, longer sentences, pretty followable ideas. So, if you have any questions about Lexiles, how they matter or don't matter to your child's reading, please let me know. But please keep in mind that as a whole human being, the reading experience needs to be diverse. Thank you. Can't wait to work with your kids this year.